Recording in progress.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the July edition of Keeping Up with Tech. Our format will be open forum, and then we can go into some of the subjects that I sent out in the email for us to discuss. I'd like to open up the floor with the first question of the evening. Who'd like to have one? Oh, this is going to be a quick meeting. Because Dennis got to have a question. Dennis, you got a question for us? No.
No, I'm barely able to attend the meetings. I'm having some health issues the last 2 months. I got some discs that are causing me severe leg pain down my leg, and it's like I can't even think straight half the time. So
So you got to stop playing frisbee.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to physical therapy. It
no more pickleball. No more pickleball.
Yeah.
And if you're real smart, you'll go back in time to the medieval times and get yourself on a rack and straighten it all out.
There you go. That'll pop things right into place.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have questions for the group?
They still have racks.
No. Okay. Well, one of the things that was brought up earlier in the pre-meeting discussions is a notice that Tim and Bob had noticed or sent out about Macrium Reflect and compatibility issues or blacklisting issues. And me not knowing what's going on, I'm going to turn it over to Bob to tell us what's going on with this.
Well, let me do a little read through. There was a lot of hype about Macrium Reflect 8 would no longer work under Windows 11. There was an update which changed the driver, actually blacklisted an old driver. The driver was called PS Mount EREX.sys. I have a little document that has all this in there, so you don't have to write it down. And the problem wasn't as extreme as had been publicized. What it stops you from doing is mounting your backup images as virtual drives. That means you might no longer be able to browse your backup images, pull individual files off of them, and you certainly would not be able to use Viboot to mount your drives as virtual your images as virtual drives. Drew King is a big advocate of doing that. So anyway, there is a way of fixing it, but you would make your computer less secure. You would have to undo the driver block in your registry. But for normal, everyday backup and recovery, verifying and restoring an entire image or an increment or whatever, those are not affected.
Okay, so therefore, you made us feel rest assured that if we're using the free version of Macrium Reflect and doing backups, we can perform a restore. We just can't do a virtual disk version of it, right?
Well, you can't mount it as a virtual drive.
Can't mount it as a virtual disk.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said you had a document about this. Would you like to share it with the group?
Yeah, I did post it for Tim earlier, but of course that didn't get to any latecomers. So for those of you who have arrived for the meeting itself, I will upload something so that we can have everybody get an equal chance at it. Where did I put it? There. And there. There you go.
Thank you.
And if anybody comes in late, they're just going to have to email me.
No. I'm going to be here on time. Okay. Thank you. That was a great piece of information. Tim, did you want to add anything to this subject?
The mounting of the virtual machine only applies to opening up File Explorer and looking at your backup drive, selecting an image, double clicking on it, and having it open up in File Explorer so that you can view what's there. You can also restore individual files or folders. But I've only used that feature a few times since version 8 has been out. And I recently had to use the backup because I was having one machine problem, and it worked absolutely fine. Did everything I asked it to do. And that's what the majority of people can continue to do, is use the version 8.0.7 XXX version, and they can keep using the Macrium Reflect to backup from within Windows. They can use the restore media to restore any of their backups. And I think you also have, under the free version, the ability to do a differential backup between the whole image backups, but you cannot do incremental. You had to have the licensed version. But at least you can continue using that. There's the one feature, and basically what Bob is saying, you'd have to go into the registry, edit one line of code that might make you slightly more vulnerable to be able to mount those images if you wanted to restore some individual file or folder.
Okay, right on schedule. Here's somebody who's going to have to email me for the document.
I told you that. That's why
Right on schedule.
they don't even see your email address right now.
I haven't posted my email address on purpose because I was waiting for somebody to show up late so that I could do a little chastising and then post my email address.
Still hold off till 7:30.
Yeah. Well, I won't post it until we get everybody in. Of course, then again, there's one person who sometimes comes in like 15 minutes before the end of the meeting. We all know who.
Yeah, but this would be over his head to begin.
Okay. So anytime anybody wants to give me the signal to to update the information.
Gotcha.
Anyway, Tim does have a copy.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Does anyone else, some latecomers, have any questions for the group? Latecomer.
I might have a comment.
Yeah. Okay. Wait, you don't like my hair.
I have a Fitbit that I've had for many years.
There's Drew.
Fitbit, and the Fitbit app that it used to have on my phone, it doesn't work anymore. So it's been replaced by Google Health, and of course that doesn't really work too well. And I went on Facebook the other night just to check to see what's going on there's a Fitbit group on Facebook, and these people are all really unhappy with what's going on. Well, the stupid thing says that I've only got an hour and some odd minutes of sleep, and as soon as you get up at night, you know it stops keeping track of you as sleeping.
Well, that stinks.
Yeah.
It doesn't it doesn't let you set like a sleep period.
No.
Start and a stop.
It treats everything, all the various Fitbits, all with the same system. Where the old Fitbit app, you had to put in which version of Fitbit that you had, so it was, work properly with that particular device. And of course, Google screwed up this as well, as you're well aware.
Right. Google. I'm thinking of Grogu. Google also did that with the Nest products too. When they bought, they axed the apps, and their new app does not work as well as the old app, and they made us buy new hardware for it. So blah, da, 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 da. I don't know. You could look into to see whether there's a class action lawsuit against them.
Well, there's somebody I noticed on Facebook that they were talking about doing that. So
Uh-huh.
we'll see.
There maybe you got to go to something like change.org or something and see if there's a petition or something that you could put your name on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to play devil's advocate, but the history of such lawsuits is you might get a few pennies back. But
Yeah.
Hey, pennies are pennies. You
Well,
know,
usually
you're not
what
going to
ha-
get your device working.
I did get a couple $100 from was it Blue Cross Blue Shield, so I wasn't expecting that to pop in my doorway.
Tim had something to add.
Usually what happens in instances like this, especially with like apps which are limited in their scope of what they do compared to a regular full program, is that some developer will make a clone of that if they think there's a big enough market. And then they'll publish it out to one of the various places where you can download the apps from it. Whether it costs you money or not, that depends upon the developer.
Yeah, Ed Keating was talking about this happening with one of his doorbell cam brands. I think it happened to Tapo, and then there was something else that it happened to.
Yeah,
And an open source version was developed,
right.
but you really had to get inside the device physically in order to be able to use the open source version, and there were other things. If you're really technically minded the way Ed is, yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
But you're going to be tinkering with the firmware of the device.
Well, I'll add one thing since we're in open discussions. This applies to anybody using a computer the last 2 months. There have been so many published vulnerabilities. AI has found over 3,000 vulnerabilities in the various OSs. I am nearly updating daily or every other day unless I have the computer turned off. And then at least once a week, I'm turning it on and doing an update immediately. This is because of so many patches going out in components of all of our OSs. Windows, Linux, Mac are all being affected by this stuff. And it's even the phones. You've got to keep up to date on what patches are coming out. Get them as soon as possible because a lot of these, in fact, July the 14th, the guy who has claimed to be wronged by Microsoft for telling them about many vulnerabilities, not paying him, and then throwing his account off the system. He's done a revenge thing and has already let loose 6 or 7 of these vulnerabilities, most of which are still not patched. And on the 14th, he may or may not, because he's feeling burnt out at this point in time, on the 14th, Patch Tuesday, will release even the worst one yet that he knows of on the public. If he decides he's too burned out, it may occur sometime later, or maybe not at all.
Thank you, Tim. So Wayne, did you try to see if there was any third-party apps you could use instead of the Fitbit app?
No, I really want to use it just for keeping track of my my steps.
Okay.
But
I will say that your problem and your dilemma is shared. My buddy in Wisconsin, who is an avid Fitbit user, loves them, hates what they've done with it. So
yeah.
you're not alone. Hates what
No,
they've
no, I
done
know.
with the app and
Yeah.
disabling stuff. And
Yeah.
I think he said he will never buy another Fitbit product
Yep,
again.
that's what a lot of people said.
Yep, and it's too bad because he loves a lot of the features in terms of also like how long the battery lasts. You know, it lasts all
Well,
week.
what I like about mine, I can go for almost a week.
Right.
This is
Yeah, and I could barely get a day off of my Apple Watch.
I know on
This-
my phone, I charge it every night.
This is
Right.
a general characteristic of Google. When they create a product and put it out there, they always monitor the usage of the app. If it falls below a certain level, it's gone. Doesn't matter how many, it could be 1 million people still using it, but maybe the bar is 1,000,000.1 level, and they'll still kill the app. And that's basically what they're doing.
There's nothing we can do about corporate greed. Okay, so we kind of covered this one. Anyone else have any questions for the group? No. Okay, I sent out some topics that we were going to possibly discuss tonight. And the first one was 3D printers. I first wanted to ask the group, is anyone here currently have or have had purchased a 3D printer, whether they're using it now or used it in the past? Hands?
The one person I know who uses those is Pete M.
Right. And Pete's not with us tonight. So
That's right. He
I
shows up
can't,
for
I can't
Linux.
finger point to him and say, Pete, you're our expert here. But he's not. He's not here tonight, so we can't ask him.
Yeah.
In the last 2 months or so, I have posted quite a number of 3D printing type articles. And a lot of them indicate that a lot of people are using the wrong plastic filament material, and or there is a problem with things like it using too much of the plastics when you have multicolor capability set in,
Mm-hmm.
and or the 3D printing that people want to do, somebody else created it and they did it in such a poor fashion that it's causing a lot of garbage to be produced for nothing.
Okay, so, in terms of the first thing that you brought out about people using the wrong plastic, consider how many varieties of plastic there are out there. It's easily done.
Yes.
You can pick a PLA plastic when you should be using an ABS plastic
Right.
or something, or a PET plastic. And each of them have their applications, their strengths, and their weaknesses, and it's knowing which is what. And are you making something that is just a toy, or is it something that has to be constructed of such a resistance that it'll handle forces that are applied to it? You almost got to become an expert in plastics to do this correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is also a little sidebar about these 3D printers. They really should be well ventilated because
Absolutely.
there is a potential for some toxicity. And the toxicity has been, up until now, had been ignored.
Yes.
Especially if you get maker groups that use the 3D printers a lot. Like in libraries and schools, they hadn't really thought through the need to ventilate. There's no OSHA for the schools or anything like that.
Right. And you're correct about that. The smart idea to approach that is put the printer near a place that you could pipe the ventilation out a window to get it outside the house. Bert, you got your hand up?
Yes, I watched a video a while back on the Model Railroad magazine articles, and the video showed them making a little truck that was an HO scale. It's working in N scale now, but the videos, I thought it would be relatively simple. I saw some of them being made in the early days of 3D printing. But this was a huge feat to be able to use numerous things to be able to make this little truck. It was like a semi trailer, and they did it on at least an episode that was an hour long, and it was a huge amount of work using different tools and plastics and grids. I don't know if you can retrieve it or not, but it was quite a surprise that it was so complicated.
That the product, the printing of it was complicated, or what came out of it was complicated?
It was hard to be able to just do one thing. You had to go through and make several passes of all kinds of things just to make this little truck.
And I guess it's a matter of how much work you want to put into it. If you want a multicolored designed piece, you're going to need to go through the exercise of filament swapping to get those colors in there. If you want a monochrome piece, that's a different story. I'll say 3D printing unto itself is a complex issue to learn, to grasp, but if you take it in small steps, which is one of the things I brought up as a topic here, is how for us seniors to learn how to use new products that we're not used to at all. A 3D printer is a perfect example. I look at them and I get cross-eyed because there is, as Bert was saying, a lot going on here. A lot, whether it's environmental, where are you going to put it, type of materials you're going to use, the printer itself, the supplies it needs, the software that it needs, the training that you have to teach yourself on how to do all this stuff, and then going through and printing it, and then what to expect when you get done. It helps if you know somebody that you could talk with, but I found that you got to take these in small steps, approach it, try to do one little task of it, whatever your period is. Could be just doing a calibration, might be it. Figure out how to calibrate the unit, or how to turn it on and turn it off, and what to do when it goes things like that.
Yeah. So now, when you have a 3D printer, obviously you're not buying toner or ink. What kind of goop or stuff do you buy to pour into a 3D printer?
You are not buying goop. You are buying filaments, and I will show you
Well, there is one exception, and if Peter was here, he could bring it up. He's got
right.
one. It's called a resin 3D printer.
Okay, but let's keep this on target to what the majority of printers that are out there, okay? It's a filament, Drew, and my son, who is dove into this 3D printing feet first, and he's just running with it. And I could tell you more, which is he sparked my interest on this. He told me that a lot of the filaments that are coming out there are made by companies that make the string for weed whackers.
Yeah.
It's the same equipment.
They're the same manufacturer.
They're
the same manufacturers,
process.
but they are different materials.
Yes, I'm not saying the materials. I'm just saying the process. He said, so therefore, the availability of these filaments is out there because there's so many companies that make string for weed whackers that it doesn't take much for them to change their equipment to manufacture this, if you want to call it goop, but it's a string. It comes on a spool like you're seeing here, and and it's picture up above. You thread it into the printer. And I'm not showing you the proper way. This is just looking at the library stuff. You thread it into the printer, and the printer does the work from there. You do have to specify what type of material you're using, which we discussed earlier. There's loads of different materials with different melting points, different cooling points, different resolution that you can get out of it, and strengths of the material. Is it one that can withhold or stand up to UV light or is it one that will break down quick? Is it one that's going to be that is great for a kid's toy? You don't care if it lasts a week, or do you care if it lasts 100 years? It's up to you and what you need. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. And I guess those spools of string made from different products probably impact the environmental output of the printer and how toxic it is to breathe in what it's exhausting.
Correct.
Well, as was mentioned previously, Drew, you should have a hood fan that vents to the outside. One place where you can learn about these 3D printers and all the wonderful things they can do is some cities, including I think the Chicago area and certainly the Boston area, have maker labs or maker spaces where even the regular public can sign up for time and get a little instruction along the way and meet with other makers and find out how they're doing things, how they're solving problems.
The Museum of Science and Industry had, and I don't know if it's still there or not, but they would bring in classes of students and they'd have like 20 machines and they'd all be making the same thing, sort of a cup holder or something like that. Also, they have one that they took up to the space station, and some of these they're using metals instead of string or plastic to be able to build things on 3D printers with metal that somehow they get melted into shapes from these various 3D printers that they
Yeah,
create.
there are 3D printers that can work with metals.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there are 3D printers that build buildings.
Printers that are available to us as consumers and what we could use
Yeah.
what we could use them for.
Yeah, Pete has been experimenting with metals, but for most of us, an affordable 3D printer would be working with these resins.
Right. So let me show you. Bamboo Labs is the printer that my son chose to go with. One, because it's very user friendly, easy to use, and as you could see by this price on here, $280 for a 3D printer that is almost take it out of the box and get it, and you can get it up and running in no time. This is a single color version, but you can change out and use multiple different filaments, or you can get one for $100 more that has 4 filament rows, and it'll swap out the colors automatically. And that's very reasonable price compared to how it used to be. Used to be $800 to $1,000 to walk in the door.
Right.
They were very complex.
So now my next question is, you're not using Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or Excel to create what you're going to print on a 3D printer. What do you use?
I will show you. Okay. You can download for free this software called Bamboo Studios from the Bamboo site. You don't even have to make an account. And with this software, this will do the slicing, which means that you can look through their catalog, which they have thousands and thousands of items in there. And as you can see on the screen here, I pulled up N-Scale Train, and they have lots to choose from in here for houses, tracks, backgrounds, buildings that you'd want to make just for trains. Thought that was very interesting. The point is, you don't necessarily have to design anything yourself. You can just use the stuff that's already posted online if it's readily available. I don't know. Give me an idea of something that you were looking for, Drew, and let's see if it's here.
A new radio for my car.
No. Come on. Something. How about a faceplate? Faceplate. What kind of radio is it?
I don't
Give me
know.
an older
Whatever
car.
comes.
Give me an
Yeah.
older car. A Ford?
Yeah. No, it's a Lexus.
Oh, a Lexus. So now it's got to be a Lexus. Lexus
Yeah.
model
RX 350
RX 350.
from 2010.
Oh, well, let's
I
see
don't.
if it's got anything for a Lexus sun visor cylinder replacement. Ooh, the little parts of your cylinder, your sun visor that breaks.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Those are okay.
Okay, car door trash bag holder. Okay, I don't see what you are looking for, but I was just trying to give you an
Yeah. No,
idea.
I wouldn't expect it to be because it's a very expensive part.
Okay, but the point is there are parts on here that can fix things that you can get somebody already designed it. You don't have to do this. You download the file. Let's pick this license plate here.
Right.
Download it
Yeah.
right here. It gives you the specs. It tells you what materials you want to use it with. You download it and you send it to the printer. It's just like printing a file. They've made them so simple you can do it directly from your phone.
Okay.
You can load this app on your phone, which I did. I threw it on my phone just to see. I don't have a printer that I want to use with it, but I wanted to see what can I print. And it's
Yeah.
huge, tremendous library. And that's just from this company. There's
Yeah.
Boku
Because
library.
they're starting to use this on the space station, but once we get to the point where we have space travel that goes beyond the moon, 3D printers on spacecraft are probably going to be very important to replace broken parts on the ship as they fly.
But can they be important for us down here on planet Earth?
There may be languages that to do the drawing specifications that the 3D printer can understand.
Yeah, I need a new antimatter injector, Mr. Kirk.
Pete knows about how you use CAD programs to specify something you create that you then, with these CAD programs, can create I guess it's a prototype or a template or something that the 3D printer, at least the more advanced ones, can then interpret and use to create what you are specifying.
You're
So
correct.
you can design it and it gets programmed using these CAD programs.
Open
And
source 3D
then
printing.
You are right there,
that's how it goes.
Bob. It helps a lot if you know CAD, you have any experience in that. If you need to design a specific item, you can do it in CAD and then send it to a software like this that I'm showing on the screen here. That's the actual slicing software. And this is what
Okay.
drives the printer.
Wonder, has anyone thought about trying to use like AI, like ChatGPT, and say, I want you to create for me a coffee cup that I can print in my 3D printer?
There's no reason it couldn't do it.
You're
At
right.
least the paid versions of programs like of AI like Claude or Perplexity, they should be able to do that.
Now, there's another factor. Like a lot of regular printers we are familiar with, many of them have scanners built in, and to be able to scan documents and create duplicates. Well, you also have scanners for 3D printing that take a 3D image, kind of like what you see in sci-fi movies and television shows, to create a holographic image. And instead, it's used in the 3D printer to be able to make an item that looks just like what you scanned. Maybe it's a replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those scanners are a little more sophisticated and expensive.
Those
But,
those are
yeah.
much more sophisticated and expensive to use. You
Well,
hit that one on the head. I recall seeing them at CES close to 10 years ago, where you'd stand in a booth and the thing would go 360 around you and scan you and potentially print a 3D printed version of yourself in miniature, like a chess piece size. But it'd be accurate because it scanned you completely.
Yeah, you became a Star Trek action figure.
Right. I mean,
Well,
the stuff is there,
there's at
but
least
I
one
not for you and me.
there's at least one construction company that is creating 3D printed houses
Yeah.
in modular form. You take the modules to a site and put the whole thing together again, and you've got a house.
yeah.
I
You know where I'd like to
visited
see
that.
this? Where I'd like to see this go is in the medical industry. You know, a lot of people need to have a knee replacement or a hip replacement. What better
It's
fit for your
already being
body?
it's already
It,
being done.
it is?
There are medical prosthetic applications, and crowns for your teeth can actually be made using a specialized type of 3D printer. They can actually 3D print a crown.
Okay,
Hmm.
I need one of those. I need one of those
Yeah,
right now.
to
I
further,
actually had a conversation with ChatGPT last week about crowns, and because I think I'm going to be needing at least 3 of them soon. And if you fly, you can get a travel package where you fly to Arizona. You can literally take an Uber to the border, and then you can, within walking distance of the border of Mexico, there are hundreds of dental places where you can get crowns and fillings and things for a third of the price of what you would pay in the United States.
Yeah, I'd be careful about that because quality matters in dental stuff, and you never know what the quality will be.
all right, without trying to get too personal, if you will, um, I myself needed to get a sleep app type device. And one of the options was to get a dental appliance that you'd wear at night instead of a machine.
Yeah.
So I'm going down this course, and I had to go to a special dentist to do this. And they took pictures of all my teeth inside my mouth and stitched it together and sent it off to a company that then 3D printed my teeth. From there, they were able to make the appliance that I needed to wear at night, because they now have this representation of my teeth and where they're all at. Should I have any dental work done, they can make a change right on this master and make me a new form. It's
Now,
amazing.
out of curiosity, I've had 2 of those devices made from my mouth using different technologies. One where the upper part and the bottom part connect together and force your mouth to go in a certain direction,
Which
and
is the
another
one
one
I have.
so that once you put it in, you kind of can't just. It's like your mouth is now bound together, like it's wired shut.
Yeah.
I replaced that. That scared the bejeebers out of me. I threw out a panic attack in the doctor's office.
Oh.
I switched to a different one that has a track on the top and a track on the bottom. And as you close your mouth, the tracks make contact with each other, and your lower jaw gently slides forward as you close your mouth. And then when you open your mouth, uh, you can just open it because they're not, the top and the bottom are not physically connected.
Yeah.
But when you close your mouth, your jaw is so many millimeters forward of where it was when your mouth was open, pulling that skin in your throat away from clogging the area up. That's what I use now.
Okay, well, I guess what I was trying to illustrate is not what we're using. I was illustrating the 3D printing technology that was being used in a medical aspect and how they were using it.
Yeah.
In terms
They
of the
made mine
merits of one device over another, that's not a discussion here. It's more of this
Yeah.
is a technique a dentist was using, and they had it 3D
Yeah.
printed.
Yeah, there are medical uses of 3D printing.
Yes.
I think they're doing it for some joint replacements as well.
Yeah. The thing that they haven't accomplished yet is 3D printing organs for people who need a liver transplant.
Yeah, I that's in the future, but not too far away.
Okay, I think we covered that subject very well. The next thing I
What's the
wanted to discuss is number two, the subject, should everything really be an app? And this could be a thorn in our sides. This could be an advantage. Who knows? It depends on how well the app is made. Apps that we wind up using would be our banking apps. And I will say that I found out that Gen Zs prefer apps over web interfaces. Another app that you may be forced into using would be getting your boarding passes for your airlines or on a cruise ship. Cruise ships have made it almost mandatory to have an app. Disney is another place where you got to have an app to be able to know what time to be at your rides and stuff. Wayne, you do a lot more traveling. Have you found the app being required?
I'm sorry. No, I haven't. I haven't had. I did use an app on one of the cruise ships that kept track of all the various different activities. And it
Right.
would let me know when the particular activity that I'd chosen was coming up. But
Didn't they also use that as your credit card?
no,
Because they put your credit card on file, and so you don't have to travel with a credit card. You just use the
Yeah.
app or your wristband now, if that's the
Yeah.
case.
Well, that's just the
Yep.
wallet application.
Yeah. Um,
Everything depends upon what it is you're trying to accomplish. If it's fairly simple, an app is a way to go versus even through the browser. If it needs a little bit more complexity, you may need to use the browser instead of the app. And then you get into full-blown programs like Adobe's programs. Those are not simple things that you're going to accomplish with an app.
Sorry about
yeah.
You can get little
I
pieces.
regarding app versus web, I had a doctor's visit at an orthopedist just yesterday, and you go into the waiting room and you go up to the receptionist. They no longer have a bunch of clipboards and paper for you to fill out your paperwork before your appointment. They had a stack of iPads,
Right.
and everybody in the room was sitting there using their own iPad, filling out the paperwork. So when it came time for me to update my medication, I didn't have to start from scratch. They already had a list of the meds in there from the last time I was there. And they were keeping track of all that in their iPad apps. And then when I met with the consult person, they brought an iPad in with them to the visit and updated it. And then when the doctor came in, he had an iPad. Um, they didn't have a single PC in their office.
Yeah, I've been to medical offices where they had only phones to communicate and to keep track of stuff, and even to print out your how much you owed and billing information. The only full scale, full sized piece of equipment they had was a printer.
Bert?
Yeah.
I think looking at the bigger picture, um, if you have an app, you have to have it loaded and updated as well as it takes space. Whereas in a browser, you're not really having it in your device. It's just the browser part. And so you could handle larger applications by going through the browser. But today, I
Right.
think many things are either. For instance, you could be in a browser and get the Microsoft Excel, or you can have the app, the
Right.
classic app. So there's, it has to do with space. And most things in our
Uh,
technology have to do with how much space is available, what are the capabilities of our devices as to how things change. And so some things can be done on your phone. Sometimes you can make a phone call from your computer because it's linking
Yeah.
to the phone. I can make a call from my watch, my Apple Watch, because it's linking
yeah.
to the phone. But it's space. I can't load a program into my watch. That's that's like going to the bank. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you have to consider the capability
Well,
of technologies short term and long term. And right now we're sort of in both worlds.
Yeah,
I'll
apps.
tell you.
Go ahead, Drew.
I can say one thing from my own business I run. I have a lot of customers that are small businesses, and almost all of them now have moved off of installed software on PCs of any form. Their medical portal information, patient information, it's all done online, so that if one of their employees or in an exam room in a doctor's office, if anything goes wrong with the PC, you just unplug it, plug a new one in, and they run the same web apps that they ran on the other PC. There's no longer any need to provide any local office support for the PC itself. If something's not working right, you take it away and give them a new one. One of my doctors has a mini PC on his desk, one of the little cubes. And that's all they have. Even in the exam rooms, they just have these little cubes, and they can swap them out in 5 minutes if something goes wrong.
Yeah, tablets are very common also. And the thing about apps is that an app only has to provide you with the interface. It doesn't have to provide the processing power. It doesn't have to do anything else. As long as it can communicate with a server or some other place where the data live. The data won't be living on the device in many cases. And that's especially true of so-called web apps, which lead directly up to a website.
Yeah.
They're just an app presentation of a website. And so it's a presentation that's actually more convenient for most people and easier for most people to use. And it's got the right aspect ratios and the right dimensions for a phone screen.
Yeah. Some
So
of my doctors, I have portals that I have to use on the web, and others have apps. It's a kind of a half and half.
yeah, I'm finding that a lot of my pre-registration and a lot of the so-called paperwork, they're asking you to go to their portal and do it online,
Yeah.
or to their website and do it online. And
Apps have also
I've
come
gotten
down.
used to that.
Apps have also made their way into our food ordering. You go to the Golden Arches, you go to Steak and Shake, you go to Wendy's or Panera Bread, and they'll have a tablet there for you to place your order. And now it comes to which one is going to work the easiest and which one's going to work the hardest for you to navigate through. And many of them are not written well, but there are some that are written very well, and it's very. And once you did it once, you're like, I can do this, no problem. I cannot say that with the one with the golden arches. Their app sucks. Their kiosks, which are app based, they suck. Steak and Shake, it's got a great interface that you use at their kiosk, and it's real fluid, easy to changes, works, just works. Um, so we're at this point where some of the companies are putting effort into it, and some are putting too much effort into it. And when they do that, they're throwing too much information at us that we have control over. basically they're filling it up with bloatware, and they create an enshittification situation. They just throw in a lot of crap into their software. I don't need one that's going to tell me when to change my shoelaces and how to tie them if I'm just want to start my boat, something ridiculous. It's crazy. So, any more points on this, on apps versus webs, and how well they're written or not written?
And you got to remember,
We go to the grocery store, we got to buy our groceries, Walmart, Aldi, and all these other ones have self checkout lanes. Those are app driven.
Yeah. Actually, if you're a Walmart member, you have the added privilege of checking out with the app on your phone.
Yes, you
So
do.
as you're shopping and you put each item in your cart, you can scan it. And by the time you're done shopping, you don't have to go through a checkout process. You just leave.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Many of those retailers have worked. They've gotten rid of the scanners they used to use for price checking in the stores because they keep breaking. So they just give the employees a phone with an app on it, and it's their app, and they can find the price as well as location of any item in the store because it's all mapped out, except for
Yeah.
Costco. Costco still doesn't.
Costco, I hate Costco for the way they put up these signs that say, row 108. What's in row 108?
Yeah, I know and that's their marketing that they do that on purpose. They're always changing this stuff up. I will say they do not have a good uh, consumer customer interface that's available for us, but other companies do, and I think Walmart is one of them where Menards has a pretty decent one. You can look for a product in their app, and it'll tell you where it is in the store, physically telling you what aisle it's in, blah blah blah.
Oh, yeah.
and yeah,
Walmart's very
in,
good with that.
in my area, the Home Depot hardware stores are pretty good with that too. And the employees, some of them have really gotten good at using the app. Other employees have resisted and they haven't done a good job of learning. But when you find somebody in the store who really knows how to use the app, and it's very often the people that most folks would assume don't even speak English, you ask them and they're like, oh yeah, let me use the app, and they're just wizards with it.
And they become wizards. Some of their employees do become wizards with it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we covered that subject pretty good. Is there anyone else want to comment any more on apps and product web-based apps? All right, I kind of flew into the next thing, which I touched on already, which was the self-checkout islands using their kiosks and apps. We kind of went through that. I don't know if anyone wants to discuss their experiences with self-checkouts. They're pretty straightforward. They claim to speed up your process. They shift the burden of the work to the customer or to underpaid employees that have to look at the screens as they're coming by in fast procession. That I don't see too often, but Meta has things in regards to that, and I'm not going to go into that discussion. You can also purchase more private, personal items that you don't want a cashier to see. You can present that to the scanner, and it doesn't care if you're buying a personal hygiene product or not. And let's see. The one thing they do say that there's problems with retail theft and scanning errors, and the fact that somebody might put in bananas and not organic bananas or something like that. Maybe they chose organic, but they rang up regular bananas, so the store is going to miss out of the profit margin on an organic merchandise or mispriced item. But I've also noticed at every self-checkout, they all have video cameras recording you. So they say
Yes.
that you got increased privacy, but I think it's the exact opposite. You have
Right.
Yeah.
The problem with those video cameras is the cameras cannot distinguish between which bananas are organic and which aren't. So
No,
they can't
if you
tell if you
look at
get
the
something like
cameras,
that.
they're pointing at you.
Right.
Specifically, the Walmart ones,
See-
they're watching you to
Yeah.
identify you doing the transaction.
Well,
Mhm.
when you go to Walmart, the bananas have a barcode on them that you scan at the register.
Yeah,
Or
I pulled bananas out of the air. It's just a name of a product, but
The thing is, at regular grocery stores, you still do a lookup, and you can look up the
right.
wrong item. You can even
Yeah.
punch in a number, and
Yeah.
as long as the weight matches, it doesn't care. I
And
mean,
the scan.
if it's apples versus bananas, of course the video will catch you.
Yeah. What pisses me off sometimes is the self checkout at Costco expects you to put all of your belongings on one side and shift them to the other side when you scan them. And they have a weight detector scale, and they know whether when you scan an item, whether you've put it on the checkout pile or
Oh
not.
yeah,
And
that's standard issue with these things.
yeah.
that I end up getting in trouble more often than not when I get into that stuff. They end up having to come over and help me check out.
It's the
That's
nuance.
interesting.
It's the nuance of operating until we get it right, And
I'm on
But
very good terms with the machines. When they take over, I'm going to
but
be one of their pets.
I have a gas station down the street from me that has scanners that you don't have to do any manual barcode scanning at all. You just take all your stuff, including food items, and put them on this tray area, and it scans 360 from every angle, looking for anywhere it can find a barcode or the shape or a type of an item. And you put four or five, six, eight items on the scanner all at once, and within 10 seconds, it tells you exactly what you have on the scanner, and you're ready to check out.
Haven't seen that one.
anyone else want to comment about self checkouts?
Like I said, they work fine for me. There's a
They
few
have been-
times when they don't. There's a few times when they don't. But
Yeah.
as for those weight scales, I rarely run into any problems. I sometimes they'll say put it in the bag, and I go, well, I'm using my own bag, so I do skip
Well,
bagging, which is an
well,
option.
the problem I have at Costco is that you have to take all your stuff out to the street in the shopping cart. I have the Costco near me has a scanner where you can put it in your hand like a little gun
Yeah,
and just scan all the items in your cart. Why should I have to take them out of the cart and put them on the damn shelf?
yeah.
Always somebody that wants it their way. Dennis, yes, Dennis.
I had to go to Costco today, optical, get an eye exam. I hadn't had an eye exam in 2 years. And when I left, I noticed that all their self checkout, they used to have 8 of them, were gone. They didn't have self checkout anymore. They just had regular lanes at my Costco. I don't know.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'll say that Costco's been evaluating this at a store by store basis on their effectiveness of their self checkouts. They, we could discuss this. One of the things that they were experimenting with was having the self checkouts, those that the customers would operate, and the self checkout where they would pre-scan everything in your cart before you got to the self checkout, and then you would just scan your credit card or your membership card. Your entire shopping cart would then be loaded into that system, and you'd just swipe your credit card and be done. You'd be out the door in a minute. But I noticed that system has gone away because it didn't work very well. There was a lot of problems. Customers did not like it, and I don't think it worked effectively well. It had its place, but even the employees did not like it. About your store, it's possible that the store manager noticed that the self checkouts were hindering them, and they decided to take them out. You know,
There
each
are
store is different.
there are locations where self-checkouts get removed because they do have loss issues.
Or they never get put in. I've seen Aldi's that have them, and I've seen Aldi stores that don't have them, and they won't put them in.
Well,
Um,
employees don't like them because they
yeah,
take the place of people.
Yeah.
specifically, like if you look at the Aldi's stores, the employee that's running the cash register is also multitasking and watching the self checkouts. They got another screen next to them, and they have to watch all the people checking out at those kiosks, at those screens. That's why employees don't like them. It doubles the workload, and they're not getting paid any extra for it.
Yeah.
But that's that particular store.
But the retailer gets to hire one employee to monitor 6 checkout lanes.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's what happens.
Okay, shall we go on to a new subject? The new subject would be scam calls and spam texts. And I wanted to know if anyone been noticing an uptick, downtick, stay the same.
For a while,
For me, it stayed the same. I got a spam call, phone call yesterday, and I think I got a text message. Probably 2 or 3 times a month, I'll get a spam text message, and
Okay.
oftentimes my phone carrier will flag it as spam and automatically ask me if I want to ban it or block it.
now,
Anyone else want to say they've stayed the same, went up?
several weeks back, I was getting spam calls one after another within minutes of each one. And after about 10 days to 2 weeks, somewhere in that vicinity, it just fell off like a rock. But it really varies. But I have on the house phone a answering machine. And after the third ring, it picks up, gives them a message, and then they have the opportunity to leave a message. And some of them, they just immediately hang up as soon as they hear that answering machine. They know how to detect it. And other ones wait until the whole message is played, then they hang up, saying nothing.
Yeah. I have if you have a need for or a want for a home phone, you don't have one, or you're thinking about switching. I use one that has an automatic call marketing blocker feature, and whenever anybody calls my home phone line, an automated message comes up and says that I have this blocking feature turned on, and to please press on your keypad the number 7. Somebody else calls the next day and it'll ask them to press number 4 or 1 or 2. Every time it's different. But nobody gets through to me. My phone never even rings until after that person presses the right number on their keypad.
Ah. So your phone automatically does it, or you have software that does that?
The phone company does it.
The phone company does it for you. That's
On
pretty neat.
my answering machine, I do have one person, don't know who it is, calling about at least once a week, sometimes more. But it says private, so that's an unlisted number. My machine picks that up right away and says the user will not accept private calls and hangs up.
Okay. Bert?
I guess whenever you have insurance renewal days, you can get numerous calls from all of them, which are fake phone numbers. You couldn't even call them back if you wanted to. But from a business point of view, I can't always be sure who's calling, and therefore I have to always try and answer and scare them off by asking initially who's calling in a loud voice, and sometimes and continue that with don't call again. Not that it matters, because it's all computerized.
It's not computerized anyways. You're right.
Does anybody here have a Samsung cell phone? Nobody?
Used to.
Samsung offers a, they used to have pre-AI, and they had their own voice assistant that was in competition with the Google Assistant. And it never really ever went anywhere. But what they did a couple of years ago is they turned it into almost like an answering service. And on the front of my phone, if I get a phone call, a live call comes in, and I don't recognize the number or it's unknown to me, I can press a button on the phone instead of hang up or reject or answer the call. I have another one that says text call. And what it will do is it will a computer automated voice will tell the person that I am screening my inbound call, and please tell me the nature of why you are calling me. And then they have to talk into their phone, and Samsung converts their voice into text, and I can read what they're saying on the phone and decide whether or not I want to actually go ahead and answer the phone.
I know iPhone will do that on their messages, that you can, hear the message as it's being transcribed, as it's coming across, and then you could answer it right then and there if you felt like it. But Samsung looks like they took it to another level.
Yeah, and it works really well.
Anyone else want to comment on this? So if you get spam texts, what do you do with it?
I block it.
You block it. So it's up to your software interface or the app that you're using. You're on Samsung. I know on the iPhones, you're reading a message and you deem that this is spam. You press it to delete, and it will ask you, do you want to just delete it, or do you want to report it as spam and then delete it? And I think
Correct.
when you report it to spam, it throws it back to the company, to Apple, who creates an index of these spam messages and where they're coming from.
Yeah. I use Google Message. I don't use Samsung Messages. They got rid of it actually. Google Messages is what I use for SMS messages. And that's what will prompt me if I want to block it as a spam.
Right. So something else you can do is, if you receive the spam message, text message, you can forward it back to your caller, let's say you forgot to do that and now you got this message, you want to send it back to Apple or Google or whomever you're getting your service from, AT&T. What you do is you would forward that message to the phone number 7726. And if you send it to that goes to the anti-spam department at any of the carriers, any of the major carriers. 7726, I believe, spells out spam. So all you need to do is forward the text to that number.
Now, when I get emails that I think are trying to gather information from me that I don't want to give out, I found out that I can type in abuse, like on Comcast, abuse at Comcast.net, and forward it to Comcast, or I can do it on Yahoo at abuse at Yahoo or abuse at AOL.
Another thing that you can do to help cut down on spam calls is, if you have a Gmail account, sign up for the freely included Google Voice phone number and give yourself a local voice phone number, because it supports phone calls that are free and it supports text messaging. So if you go someplace where they want to send you a text message, or sign up for messaging, or give you a phone, or say, what is your phone number? Just like could be a supermarket, or they did it this week. I went to the registry of motor vehicles here in Sarasota, and when you check in at the front door, you get a number. And if you give them your cell phone number, they'll send you a text message when it's your turn to go to a terminal. And you, instead of giving out your real phone number to so many different places, give them your Google phone number instead.
Now, is that still available?
Yeah.
Yeah, I use it all the time.
No, but I know you, but can you still get a Google phone number?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and if you have an Android phone, in the Google folder on your phone, there should be an icon called Voice. And then you can, if you don't have a phone number automatically, you have to sign up and get a phone number, but it's free. That's what I used. When I went swimming with my cell phone a few years ago, and I had no cell phone. What I did is I forwarded my cell phone number to my Google phone number, and I made and received phone calls on my Android tablet. So if I were, as long as I was connected to Wi-Fi, I didn't have built-in Wi-Fi, but if I was home or at someone else's home, I could make and receive phone calls using my Google Voice phone number while I was waiting for a replacement cell phone. So that's a tip for anybody to use. If you lose your phone, I have my phone set up with a display on the screen. So, like, if you found my phone and the screen came on, it would say at the very bottom, if found, please call this phone number. That's my Google Voice phone number, and it will ring on my tablet so that I can get my phone back.
Interesting. Thanks, Drew. So that's using Google Voice.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did a quick lookup, and it is there. And I have a phone number that I could pick and choose today.
There are 3 tiers of their service, one of which is free and 2 of which are paid. And then there's also an enterprise version.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they have cell phone service too.
Yeah, some of these are associated with Google Workspace.
But if I have to give my number out to somebody because they want to send me a text, and it's not a friend of mine, it's some kind of temporary business relationship, I give them my Google number and not my real number.
Thank you. Anyone else want to discuss on this? Okay. Number 5 that I have is learning new technology without feeling overwhelmed, which stems from the discussion that I had earlier about learning how to use a 3D printer, because that is a pretty monumental task to try to figure this one out. Or if you're not a website designer and you've been thrusted into the realm of designing and upkeep of a website, you gotta go slow and easy on this stuff, because you can really mess things up. So as we're getting older, it's harder to learn these new things. Best ways to do it would be to watch the YouTube tutorials, get some written guides if there are any available, take notes, make cheat sheets, practice without fear of breaking something. That's a tough one to do. And build your foundation of what you need to know. Start with small little things, little bites, and slowly slow your way into it as you become more acclimated or comfortable with the subject of what you need to learn. Is that a good pointers? Or am I just blah? Okay. I was just trying to, because of when I brought up the subject of 3D printers, that I thought would be pretty difficult for many people to learn, because as I started looking into it, it is huge. There's a big learning curve on this. It's just kind of like building a website, big learning curve. You're not used to this stuff. So you got to start somewhere, work small, slow, easy, and don't worry about breaking it. Anyone want to comment on this subject? No.
Well,
Okay.
of course, one of the resources we have is what we're doing right now, meeting in various groups,
Right.
user groups.
Thank you, Bob. We got this self-promotion going on here. This group is a great place for us to learn complex things, although we don't necessarily sit down and go through one particular thing all night long. We do have some examples of that. The Linux SIG might be more of one particular subject that we could hone in on all night long, or it could be the Windows Office and AI where you can hone in on more specific things. But thank you, Bob. So let's go into the new subject, the futures of cars and transportation technology. We all are familiar with the fact there's EVs, electric vehicles, which are not necessarily the rage, but they're the thing now. Or hybrid cars, which I'll bring up the question: does anyone here in the group not know what a hybrid car is? Good. We all know what a hybrid.
One where I have my feet dangling down pedaling with my feet, and the other one is when it's on gas.
Okay, isn't that like the Fred Flintstone mobile?
Yeah.
Your feet would be doing a little scurrying on the ground to get the propulsion going. So we know that technology is going to lead towards, and it's already there, into the self-driving cars, the automated self-driving cars, that be the robo-taxis and the like. And flying cars are going to be coming down the road. Anyone want to comment on any of these new technologies?
Well, I've got a plug-in. I have a plug-in hybrid.
Okay.
I've had for 4 years. I've put in 20,000 miles and put in 120 gallons of gas.
You've had a car for 4 years and you've only drove 20,000 miles?
Yeah. Well, it's around town.
Yeah, I do about 7,000 to 8,000 miles a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a plug-in hybrid, and I'm usually a low mileage driver per day per week.
Mm-hmm.
There are occasional longer trips, but I don't do road trips.
So those of you that have the plug-in hybrids, you find that you are not filling up very often. Do you purposely have to make sure you consume gasoline?
If you don't use ordinary gasoline, you for a period of 1 to 2 years, you should be preserving it with these various additives. Even a few months, there's a noticeable difference in performance in gasoline, and it can pick up water, especially in winter. So that's not good for the fuel system. So
Yeah,
yes, you do need to use plug-in hybrids in their gas hybrid mode once in a while. I find maybe every 3 months or so I fill up, but I never do a full tank.
Question, Bob. Have you ever considered using something like gasoline stabilizer in the gas to prevent some?
That is exactly what I'm talking about. There are things like Stabile and various other brands, and they help remove the water and prevent icing in winter, and in summertime they prevent the natural tendency of gasoline to take on water and to deteriorate. Also the additives, the volatile additives, have a tendency to be more stable when you add those stabilizers.
Yeah,
And since I only pick up gas every few months, I do that. I use the standard rate. And I never fill up a full tank. And I do run the tank almost all the way down before I fill up again. That helps to prevent things like sludge.
Got to be careful on running the gas tanks down to empty because all the new cars have the gas pumps in the gas tank, And if you run the gas level too low, you'll burn up your fuel pump.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're also calibrated so that when it says empty, you're not empty.
Right.
And I have never tested that theory.
I've heard some people have done that.
Yeah, I know for a fact that my car has 2 gallons of gas in it when it says empty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't go too far below that because when you get down to a gallon or less, you're endangering things.
Yeah, I mean, the gas is sloshing around, and if it sloshes away from
Yeah.
the pump, now you got air.
Yeah, I pulled it too close one time. I was below empty and I drove over to my niece's house here in Sarasota and I parked in front of her on the street in front of her house and I didn't notice anything wrong. When I went to leave, however, I couldn't start the car. There was not enough fuel to be injected into the engine to turn the engine over. So I went and bought 1 gallon I had to buy a 1 gallon container and then buy 1 gallon of gas to put in it. But it turned out that 1 gallon was not enough. I ended up calling AAA,
Yeah.
and they brought another couple of gallons to fill in to get my car started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to run it down that low. But
Okay,
with plug-in hybrids, you don't want to leave a lot of gas in the tank for a long period of time because that also will cause problems.
So my other question is on these newer cars, and Wayne, you're probably the one person in the group that buys a new car more often than many. Have you noticed that the software, the software technology is becoming too complex?
Not for me, because I had a Tesla, and of course the Tesla didn't have any knobs. It had two knobs, one or two buttons. One button opened the glove box, and the other button to turn on the emergency flashers. Everything else is controlled by touching the screen. And now
Okay.
the newer ones even have the turn signals by touching the screen.
And is this, so you're saying you were okay with that technology?
Not necessarily. Well,
Ah,
my wife hated it. When my loose was up, I got rid of it. So that's why I went to a plug-in hybrid. And of course, the plug-in hybrid is Toyota's got more of all the knobs and the whistles like typical cars.
right.
Right. Yeah. Toyota's moving towards hybrid as a standard platform. The RAV4, their popular little SUV, after next year won't be available with a gas-only engine.
Well, that's what I have as a RAV4 Prime. It's a plug-in
Yeah.
hybrid.
Mhm.
But many of the cars are all hybrids now. You'll see a lot of just about all the manufacturers produce hybrids, but they're not
Yeah.
plug-in.
But, interestingly enough, is I've been looking around at getting a new car, and I've been driving a Lexus for a long time, and over 20 years. And they don't make 6-cylinder engine cars anymore. All of their SUVs now, like my car, if I would replace it with the equivalent 2026 car, they're all 4-cylinder engines. And the only one that's available with a hybrid, is like $70,000, and it's crazy. Um, um, so I said, all right, I'm going to go to Acura and see what, maybe I'll buy an Acura. Well, turns out that they up until 2023 or four, they had a hybrid SUV. Sales must not have been very good, and they don't offer one anymore. So if you want a luxury SUV from Acura and a hybrid, you can't get one. You have to buy one used.
Bert?
Yeah, I only drive about 1,000 miles a year, and what I have is battery problems. Because I don't drive it often, the battery dies out because there's so much electronics on the car that it can't keep up unless you're driving and charging the car. And so I've had 3 or 4 different days when I go to the car and instead you can't get in the door. You gotta,
Well, you can buy an inexpensive charger for your car. You plug it into the battery, you plug it into the wall, and just leave it there.
Well, I don't have a garage. It's out in the parking lot, so that's not an option.
Get a 1,000-foot extension cord, plug it into your neighbor's house.
No, what I get is, I've got services to call and jump me, but it's surprising that it uses so much electricity with all the stuff built in and the remote capabilities and stuff. So, and it's an older car, but it's 8 years old. But at the same time, it's just so much electronics that you have to keep driving it to charge it, no matter what battery you have.
Yeah. For about $50, you can buy yourself one of those little portable jump starters.
Yeah, I know. But then I got to open the hood and go through.
Some of them you can just plug into the battery, into the 12-volt cigarette lighter.
If you have one anymore.
What cigarette lighter?
Well, they call them a 12-volt accessory port.
I don't
Cars
think
don't have them anymore.
Some
I don't
do.
think mine has one, and it's a
No.
20.
Okay.
Yeah, they
What is
don't.
it?
They don't make those.
2020.
Yeah, Sanford. They don't. You haven't been to a car dealer in a while, Sanford. They don't make those anymore.
Since about the 2010s or early 2020s, they have been phasing those out.
Well, mine has
They're
it, but,
replacing them with USB chargers.
yeah, mine,
I do have a full 12-volt charger.
Okay.
Yeah. So Bert, what's yours got?
mine has a charger, has a cigarette lighter, and it even has an AC plug, but on the inside. But at the same time, I'm not really anxious to climb under the hood or anything else. There's a time to let somebody else do it, and
Let somebody else do it. Got it. That's a safer way, a safer approach to go.
The problem with the jump starters that go into the cigarette adapter is they're limited in their voltage because it's a cigarette adapter. It's not you're not directly connecting to the battery like you would with it. So they don't work as well.
Yeah, I don't think they could pump as much amperage through that port.
No.
No. Okay. But it was just a thought, just an idea. He didn't want to open his hood.
Yeah.
This was a way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, my wife's got
You would likely that you could call AAA and have them help you before you could get your car started with one of those things.
which is what I do.
Yeah.
My wife's got an Audi that they call a mild hybrid, and it's got a 40-volt battery that's separate from the 12-volt battery, and it uses it for braking. So it does not have a regular electric starter like you used to have on the flywheel. It's got a 20 horsepower motor, and if you turn it down on a real hard and the gas, it actually kicks that 20 horse motor in to actually add extra power. But when you brake, it's using the dynamic braking of that motor to pump power back into that 40-volt battery until you get down. It's like all the electric cars use that braking like that.
Oh, you're talking about like a hybrid battery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
the brakes in your car, Wayne, are very different from the brakes in a standard gas car.
That's right.
your brakes are contributing to the power generation of your or
Right.
the recharging of your battery.
Right. And that the same on my wife's Audi, but it's as a regular car. It's not a hybrid. It's what they call a mild hybrid. So it's not a regular hybrid.
Hmm.
But it uses that braking, electric braking until it gets down to what, a couple miles, and then of course switches over to the hydraulic brakes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Should we move on to this subject, or is someone still out shopping for a car? I know Tim is. Tim just can't wait to buy a new car. After he pays off his air conditioner, he's buying a new car.
Well,
I'm putting up the money for the car.
Well,
I'm
well,
not putting up my house for it.
I already know that my next car, my plan. I don't know if it'll work out. My plan is 2024 was the final, or 25 was the final year that Acura made a hybrid. So I'm waiting until at least 2028 and then buy a pre-owned 25 or 24.
you could
And
probably
then
get one now that should be coming off the lease.
I want to get a 24 would be
A
coming off
24
a
would
2-year lease. Coming off a
2-year
two-year
lease.
lease.
Figure a 24 came out in 23 because they come out the year before the year that they're posted. So like you could buy 2027s essentially this year at some point.
Sure, in the fall.
Yeah. So I'm just giving you an example. 2023, 3 years later would be 2026. You could find an off-lease vehicle.
Yeah. I'm looking for a car that was driven by somebody like my niece. Like my niece is in sales and she does a lot of driving for work. She does a good 25 to 30,000 miles a year. And if she leases a car and then turns it in after 3 years, it's already got 75,000 miles on it. So the resale value on that car is a lot better for me than somebody who only drove 12,000 miles a year. And the car is just as good a car. I mean, the fact that she drove 25,000 miles a year on a car doesn't mean anything in today. Today's engines will go for 200,000 miles.
Over 200,000.
So my plan is to get a car that's got at least 50, 60, 70,000 miles in next year.
Okay, but
this year might
we want to know what technology you're looking for, not the car.
Well, the technology that I'm looking for is to get a hybrid engine, but also the automatic lane changing safety feature and the adaptive cruise control, automatic braking, parking assist. The new car that I'm looking at has 3 parking modes: parallel, forward end, and rear end. And all you have to do, if you want to park, if you're at a shopping plaza and you want to rear park your car into the parking spot, you just press the button on the dashboard and it parks you rear end first. Automatically. You don't even have to touch the steering wheel.
Pretty neat. I do have it in my car. I never use it. It takes more time to think about what button do I have to push to make this happen than it is to go and line up my car and back it in, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what's really nice is when you come out of the shopping plaza or the store that you're in or the restaurant that you're eating dinner at and it's raining and you can open up an app on your phone and have your car drive over and pick you up at the curb.
Ooh. This one I like. I know the Teslas did that, but none of my cars do that. I think that would be pretty sweet. Okay, any more on buying, car shopping for new technology in cars? With that, we're going to move on to what we're boiling down. We only got a couple more topics to discuss. Artificial intelligence becoming our daily tool. And how is it becoming our daily tool? How are we using it every day, whether we realize it or not?
Did you skip
Anyone
number?
want to comment on that?
Did you skip number 7?
I use one AI app or another at least 10 times a day.
Okay.
Far more than I ever did a Google search.
Drew really embraces it. Anyone else here using AI on a daily or often basis? Conscientiously or unconscientiously? I will say probably many of us all are using our browser to do a quote unquote Google search. And when you're doing a search, it no longer does it the old Google way, it does it in the AI assisted way. So remember the old way? Here's your search, and you're searching for buttercups, and it gives you 20 links on the subject of buttercups. And you got to figure out which one is going to talk about buttercups as related to whatever it's going to be. But now AI can figure out what you want in buttercups and display the proper information, or it can get it for you to further your conversation. So we're using it whether or not we realize it, whether or not we intend to use it. It's in our search programs. How else are we using it? Drew, we already expressed how you're using it. Anyone else want to comment on this?
I use it. Yeah, go ahead.
I just add one quick thing. I saw on TV an advertisement for a university. I don't remember which one. It was something out west that's now offering an actual college degree in AI. Like, and you can get an artificial intelligence degree in college now.
It may not be accredited, however.
Yeah, I don't know.
Someone else want to comment on this?
I think it sneaks in once in a while in different programs because it's so linked. You don't have to go to it, but when you're just running a normal program, all of a sudden it's there, or it's sneaking in without you knowing it.
Exactly. It could be that you go to a website because you want to learn something more about a product, and there's a chat bot there. Well, that chat bot is often using AI. It's AI driven. So you're integrating with that chat bot or AI in that fashion. If you specifically use ChatGPT or the other type programs specific to do things, searching, put compilations, writing subjects. I got a cousin that decided he wanted to write some music. He's not a music writer, but he put the words together and had AI help him compose songs and publish it. And I haven't heard it yet, but I heard he just released it or is releasing it this week.
All right, I just did a search. Top universities offering a dedicated Bachelor of Science in Artificial Intelligence. Here are a few of the schools that now have an accredited degree. Carnegie Mellon, the University of Pennsylvania,
Of course,
Purdue University, University of Southern Florida, University of California, San Diego. It's quite a few.
Yes. Carnegie Mellon, for sure. They are usually leaders in that stuff.
But my point was more that when you see it in an advertisement, those generally aren't accredited schools.
The fact of the matter is, there is very serious study of AI that goes on, and there are actual degrees. You used to get a degree, well, once upon a time, to get a degree in information technology or computer science, you actually had to sign up for a mathematics degree. Now, You can get a degree in computer science and nobody questions that. Soon, if not now, you'll be able to get a degree where you're a little more specialized into AI and how it relates to all of these things. Your basic education is still computer science, but the way it's applied is to AI development.
Well, I think it's also applied to business type things, especially in data analysis areas now.
Well,
That's one area.
if you were interviewing to hire a new employee and you had a choice between somebody who graduated from school with a degree in one thing or somebody that didn't graduate from a degree with one thing but is really good at using AI, they can do more jobs than the person who went to a school for a degree in one thing. I think that's what companies are going to start hiring. When they start hiring AI jobs to replace regular employees, they're going to replace one person will do 4 jobs.
There are limits to how AI can augment how much work a person can do. Yes, they can do more output, but the quality of the output suffers greatly when they start doing several people's jobs. This is how Microsoft got into trouble. This is how several other companies have gotten into trouble. Too much vibe working, too little checking the AI output to see whether or not it actually makes any sense.
And law firms too. And they have been chastised in court.
Well, you can have AI write you a program to do something, but it takes a programmer to have the ability to edit that program and make it do different things or expand upon it. Um, I read an article in the news on Google the other day where some guy was sick and tired of the fact that Google had removed all of their ad blocking extensions when they went to version 3 of their extension code technology. And he described in his article how he went into one of the engines and asked it to create um, a version 3. I forget what they call it. It's something with an M, M something 2 and M something 3.
Manifest.
Manifest. Thank you. And he asked AI to create a Manifest 3 compatible ad blocker extension for Chrome. And it did it. And
I use Ghostery and I have not had problems with excessive numbers of ads. I've never trusted list-based ad blockers. I consider that to be whack-a-mole.
I think we're in an age where everything changes weekly in terms of these products. And in addition to that, we're sort of not, well, like Microsoft's concept is to create numerous versions for specific knowledge situations where you would wind up with a group of different AIs that would take over your work, and be responsible for doing certain jobs specifically. But it's not a one tool kind of a situation. It's a group of tools to be able to, just like programs when it comes down to it. But it would do
yeah,
your job in a specific way, just like a specific program. It's not there yet.
yeah. If you're hiring like an entry level IT support staff, they can field a question on Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever, and ask ChatGPT what the answer is. And you don't have to be a Mac person to know how to tell somebody how to answer a Mac question. Previously, if you didn't have AI, you had no hope. You could do a Google search and try and find the answer. But a lot of times now, uh, somebody in my user group will ask a question related to something that I don't even know. I'll go into ChatGPT, ask the question just because they didn't know to do it. And get the answer and post it to them. And I don't even know if the answer works. I just give it to them.
Yeah, you do have to be careful. AI can do things like skip steps or give
Yeah.
incorrect steps or steps that no longer work because the program changed. I've had that happen numerous times with things I'm trying to do by way of ridding Windows of some of its real annoyances.
Um,
I There are things that used to work that don't work now. There are things that are a little different now from where they were. I and Microsoft keeps on rearranging where the settings are.
Um,
you also
I
have
have actually learned very carefully now if I ask AI for a procedure of steps to do something, before I accept those as Godspell, I will reiterate my question and say, "Are you sure that these are the correct steps?" And it will go out and double check, and sometimes more, it will actually correct itself.
Well, you also have a situation where I've used it in trying to figure out a computer problem and get a solution that's workable. And after you get to a certain number of iterations in asking it information or clarification and so forth, and giving it feedback, it loses track of what it was doing previously. And therefore, it's almost like starting over again without a break.
Anyone else on this? I think we did pretty good. We'll go on to our final subject, final thing to discuss tonight, and that would be digital organization matters. How are it kind of going through what good habits do we as digital users here are utilizing to organize our stuff, to clean out our unused software, organize our paperwork? How are we using our computers to organize our lives? Are we doing it, or are we just using it as another place to clutter up? Anyone want to discuss on that?
I converted off of paper in my house several years ago, and now cell phone apps. I have an app on my phone that's available for Android and Apple. Um, I showed it to my neighbor who has an iPhone, and he really liked it. And I said, I don't know if it's available or not. And he went into the Apple App Store, and it was there. It's called Genius Scan, and
Genius scan.
and it's available for Apple and Android. And if I go into a restaurant, I use it. The first thing I started using it for was receipts. If I go shopping and I buy something that is worth more than a few dollars, or it's not just a grocery receipt, it's something that I purchased where, I may need to return it within the 30 day, and I want to know where my receipt is. I will scan it into that app, and it is extremely accurate at finding the borders of the item that it is. You can take a receipt. I go to Costco and I fill up my car with gas. Before I leave the gas station, I take this receipt, put it on the seat next to me, and scan it. And it finds the borders of the receipt and cuts out the receipt only and leaves the seat, and you don't even see the seat. And then I can automatically upload it to my Google OneDrive, to my not my Google OneDrive, my Microsoft. I upload it to OneDrive, um, and um, and then I have a folder called receipts, and then under there I've got categories, and then there are times where I brought an item with me to return to a store and just walked out of my house without the real paper receipt. And I went to the store and I said, geez, I forgot my paper receipt. Can I show you my scanned one? And they said, sure. And they took back the item. So I recently had my roof is in the process of being replaced. It still has, it's partially done and partially not done. All the paperwork for that's been scanned in. Um, anything that I get in the mail that I want to keep, that I need to keep, doesn't go into a filing cabinet anymore. It goes into a scanned folder. Um,
And how are
and
you
everything.
organizing that folder? Just in
Well,
general, you don't have to be specific, but just generalities, like by
well,
year, by category.
I have one that I have a folder called 5811, which is just my house number. Any receipts or things that I buy for the house. If I buy a refrigerator, if I buy a TV, if I do the roof, if I get new insurance documents, whatever it is, if it's related to my house, I put it in the folder with my house address. Um, Under receipts, I've got one for different department stores, a subfolder for for Macy's, another one for Costco. I have one that's just general receipts. And if I go to my mechanic and I uh, get a receipt for the work that was done on my car, that gets scanned into my car folder. So instead of collecting all of my work orders that I've had done in the car, oil changes, suspension changes, a new tie bar here, a new tire there, all that stuff is collected in a folder for my car. So I have a record of it all in one place, and I don't have to go fumbling through filing cabinets anymore.
Okay. All right. So
And this app can scan one page at a time or 10 pages at a time. It will ask you if you want to add more pages to the document, so you can create a multi-page document.
pretty cool. Pretty neat. Has anyone else here done any form of digitization of their lives?
I don't digitize, but I do download things like bank ledger and various receipts. And if I pay for something online, like my cell phone bill, I will download all that as PDF. I have folders within folders that start at the top level, finances, down to, the top level is which year, then it's finances, and then it's categories of finance, and then it would be individual things that happen. My real, uh, shall I say, collecting point for my omnibus collecting point is orders, receipts for things I've ordered. I haven't organized that by what kinds of things they are. At the end of each month, that goes into my bank has a little table of its own called categories, and they supply different categories that you can attach to each and everything in the ledger. And so that results in a spreadsheet that contains the categories. And then you do a data sort, and all the categories separate out. And therefore I can have records. I have Social Security reporting requirements, which require me to know exactly what I've spent in particular categories.
So
So
you found the solution is to digitize as much of this as possible.
it's a lot easier to sort digitally.
It is a lot easier. Having
I also do have paper files.
Mhm.
My paper files sit in bins by year, and they sit in hanging folders by category. But it's a lot easier to do that
Yep.
electronically.
Drew, I'm with
Yeah.
you. I went paperless years ago, and I'm still am. It's a task to keep up on it, but it's so much better of a task. I don't have shelves and shelves of paperwork and everything's addressable, indexed, sortable. Someone asked me in the family, "Can you find the receipt from we bought blah blah blah?" I got it. Doctor's bills, vets, everything. It's all there at our fingertips. Very
Yeah.
advantageous.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
any other last comments on this? Because it's our last subject, our last question.
I used to have a little notebook that I kept track of when I bought the gasoline, for the car.
Yeah.
On my phone, it's called Fuelie, and I've got it for all the different cars. And when I go with the gas, it plugs in the current mileage and how much the gas was, how many gallons. And also you can put in whenever you get the car washed or whenever the car is serviced. So it's really handy.
Yeah, I found something like that for your car maintenance is very advantageous, especially if you have multiple cars that you
Yeah.
need to keep track of. When my family was bigger and I had more kids' cars and I had 3, 4 vehicles to be keeping track of, it was hard. It was very hard to remember, where each one was in terms of oil changes or tire rotations or regular maintenance. So that digitizing really was advantageous. I'm going to conclude tonight's meeting and stop the recording.